Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Dana again, and today you're at Research Road. This is a weekly series where we go through science and tech news with a bit of dry humor. Then we answer some questions from y'all. Today is the 11th of February, 2025, and on this date in 1990, Nelson Mandela was released from prison. So, starting off with tech news, a blog called Fuel Arc is claiming that the Cybertruck is more prone to fire fatalities than the Ford Pinto. Research finds that most people are not prepared for AI, and that use of AI ends up damaging their critical thinking skills. A group involving Elon Musk tried to initiate a takeover of OpenAI for $100 billion. Early rumors say the board at OpenAI finds the offer laughable and will reject it. And now on to space. Asteroid 2024 WIR4 now has a roughly 1 out of 50 chance of hitting Earth in 2032. The James Webb Telescope has been tasked with studying it. A watchdog is suggesting the Boeing Starliner may not have a future with NASA and question the space agency's need for it. The agency was also informed it might need to revise its Artemis plans. Now it's time to talk about the developing climate crisis. 2 studies suggest the 1.5-degree climate target has been breached. Professor Prof. James Hansen, who has been a fixture of the climate community since the 80s, has said that 2 degrees is dead as well. NOAA has been told to search grants for climate-related terms. This might indicate that the Trump administration is seeking to curtail that funding. In the world of animals, images of 2 black wolves were caught on a wildlife camera in Poland. Black wolves are rare, and it is believed the pair are siblings. The nation of Sri Lanka lost power when the grid failed recently. Why is this in the animals section? Because apparently the blackout was the result of a monkey coming into contact with a transformer. There has been no word about whether the monkey is okay. In health news, researchers at Tufts University reportedly were able to use a pig to grow human-like teeth. There's hope that one day this tech might be used in dental applications. A new strain of bird flu was contracted by a dairy worker. Officials still say the risk to the general public is low. Texas is dealing with a measles outbreak, which we briefly mentioned last week. Information has now come out that the county involved has a school vaccine exemption rate that is roughly 5 times the Texas average and amounts to more than 10% of the students. Now let's dig up the past a little. In 2014, an 1,100-year-old hoard of about 11 pounds of silver and gold was discovered in Scotland. It became known as the Galloway Hoard. It was described as one of the most significant Viking hoards ever found. It fueled years of speculation about who owned it. There were a lot of theories about powerful Vikings. Well, a recently deciphered inscription states, quote,
"This is the community's wealth."
It could also be translated as property. Even 1,000 years ago, it took a community to build something that stood the test of time. It has prompted a lot of questions about why the community's wealth might have been buried, though. A Germanic site in the Netherlands was probably used to make offerings to pagan gods, according to researchers. The site revealed what appeared to be so-called devil's coins, which is what Christian missionaries called coins offered to pagan gods. Some Levantine, Middle Paleolithic artifacts have been found with geometric patterns. The items reportedly range somewhere between 250,000 to 45,000 years old. For a long time, symbolic and abstract thinking wasn't thought to have existed back then, but art finds a way. And now on to oddities. In October of 2024, the earth shook in Iran. Claims circulated on social media that it was a nuclear weapons test. Researchers have confirmed that it was, wait for it, drum roll, an earthquake. The mystery of blood falls is partially solved. In Antarctica, there's a waterfall, but the water is red. There's nothing supernatural about it, it turns out. The iron-rich salty water from below the glaciers is reacting with oxygen. The other mystery as to why the water remains liquid even in extreme temperatures seems to be, at least in part, due to high salt content. And now we're going to answer some of your questions. So to start off, I got a bunch of questions about the risk of tsunamis from the asteroid we talked about last week. The asteroid is named 2024YR4 if you want to look into it. But here's one of the questions.
Dana, you said we wouldn't need to worry about the asteroid if it hit the ocean, but what about tsunamis? Are disaster movies wrong?
So disaster movies aren't wrong, but most disaster movies focus on large asteroids. This one is a city killer, not a planet killer. Latest In says it's somewhere between 40 and 100 meters across. At that size, it would depend on where it hit and how much of it was left after coming through the atmosphere. The odds of impact have gone up a bit since last time we talked about it, but again, they fluctuate. I'm not saying don't look up, but we'll have much better information soon.
What do you think about the idea that what we're seeing with MAGA is an extinction burst? You seem to be pretty well informed about different disciplines. Do you really think that since they won't get their reward in rolling back social progress that they'll move on to a new behavior?
I understand the theory, and it doesn't have any glaring holes, but I'm not sure people are expecting the reward of rolling back social progress. For those who aren't familiar with this theory, it's something that happens when a reward is withdrawn. You always buy your kid a piece of candy at the store. You stop buying the candy. The whining and outburst that follows is an example of extinction burst. Sure, it makes sense, but I don't think their anticipated reward is rolling back social progress. If you listen to MAGA voters, most don't actually have any coherent policy positions. They're on a team and they want their team to win. It's more like rooting for a football team that makes it to the Super Bowl but doesn't win. Your team still got there. I think we missed the chance for MAGA to fade away quietly. If Trump had lost the election, that would have happened. But to my way of thinking, they got their reward, so they won't abandon it until there is a negative outcome. The simultaneously good and bad news is that on our team we have people really well versed in economics, foreign policy, healthcare, science, and religion. We argue about a lot of things. The one thing we don't argue about is whether or not there will be a downturn under Trump. The only argument is which field will spark the downturn. It seems pretty clear that they will get a negative outcome. I think that will be the point when Trumpism starts to fade, and I would guess that many supporters will pretend they weren't.
I'm a Canadian who just started watching Belle. I was shown your show after one of hers. I'm sorry if this is something everybody knows, but are you and Dee her daughters? I love your team of people. Thank you for showing those outside the United States that you aren't all crazy because we have our doubts.
We are not related, but this is a very common question. And you're welcome. Sorry, our country is threatening to take over your country. That looks like all the questions for this week. This week's quote is attributed to Gary Kasparov. The point of modern propaganda isn't only to misinform or push an agenda. It is to exhaust your critical thinking, to annihilate truth. So that's all the data we have to date. Hope you enjoyed it and hope to see you again soon.